Good morning. We're talking about a meeting that the entire world was watching very closely. This wasn't just any diplomatic get-together, it was a summit between two of the most powerful leaders on the global stage. The central focus was the relationship between the United States and Russia, a relationship that has been strained for years, filled with tension and mistrust. The goal of such a meeting is to open lines of communication, to talk directly, and to see if there is any common ground on a range of very difficult issues. These summits are critical because they can either de-escalate conflicts or, if they go poorly, make things even worse. On one side, you have Donald Trump, the 45th President of the United States. He came to power with a promise to put America first, often questioning traditional alliances and preferring direct, personal negotiations over established diplomatic channels. On the other side is Vladimir Putin, the long-serving leader of Russia. A former intelligence officer, he is known for his calculated and strategic approach to foreign policy. His primary goal has been to restore Russia's influence as a major global power. The meeting between these two leaders is significant because the United States and Russia are two of the world's foremost nuclear powers. The relationship between Washington and Moscow has a direct impact on global security. In the United States, Trump faced intense scrutiny over allegations of Russian interference in the 2016 election and questions about his administration's ties to Moscow. In Russia, Putin needed to project strength and show his people that he could stand up to the West and defend Russia's interests. So what exactly are these sanctions we keep talking about? In simple terms, sanctions are penalties imposed by one country on another. They are a tool of foreign policy, used to pressure a government to change its behavior without resorting to military force. These penalties can take many forms, such as banning travel for certain officials, freezing the assets of individuals and companies, or most significantly, restricting access to international financial markets. The United States, along with its European allies, first imposed major sanctions on Russia in 2014. This was in direct response to Russia's annexation of Crimea, a peninsula that was part of Ukraine, and its support for armed separatists in eastern Ukraine. The deadline everyone was watching was tied to a different set of sanctions, imposed later under a law called the Chemical and Biological Weapons Control and Warfare Elimination Act. These were triggered after the United States determined that the Russian government had used a nerve agent in the poisoning of a former Russian spy, Sergei Skripal, and his daughter in the United Kingdom in 2018. This deadline was so important because it forced a decision. It wasn't something that could be delayed or ignored indefinitely. During the summit, both leaders held a joint press conference, which gave the world a glimpse into their private discussions. What became immediately clear was the difference in their public messaging. President Putin was direct and assertive. He openly stated that he wanted a better relationship with the United States and reiterated Russia's denial of any interference in the 2016 U.S. election. He framed the conversation as one between two equal powers, discussing mutual interests. Former President Trump's remarks were more optimistic and focused on the potential for a future partnership. This approach was consistent with his style of prioritizing personal relationships in international diplomacy. One of the most talked about moments was when Trump was asked whether he believed his own intelligence agencies or President Putin on the issue of election meddling. His answer, which seemed to give equal weight to both sides, caused a significant backlash back in the United States. So what happens next? The summit itself did not produce a major breakthrough on the sanctions. However, it did change the dynamic of the relationship. By meeting directly, Trump and Putin established a personal line of communication, which could be used to manage future crises. The immediate impact on the sanctions was that the looming deadline forced the administration's hand. Ultimately, the Trump administration did impose the second round of sanctions required by law, but they were seen by many as weaker than they could have been, a sign of the administration's reluctance to completely close the door on diplomacy. In the long term, the path for U.S.-Russia relations remains filled with uncertainty. The fundamental disagreements that led to the sanctions in the first place have not gone away. This makes a full repeal of sanctions highly unlikely in the near future. However, the summit did open the door for potential, limited cooperation in specific areas. For example, both leaders expressed interest in restarting talks on nuclear arms control. These small steps, if successful, could slowly build trust and create a foundation for tackling the more difficult issues, like the sanctions, down the road. Ultimately, this summit was important because it put the future of the U.S.-Russia relationship and the sanctions that define it, squarely in the spotlight. It highlighted the deep chasm of mistrust between the two nations, but also showed that both leaders were at least willing to talk. For now, the sanctions remain the central point of leverage, and their future will be the truest indicator of where this complex and critical relationship is headed.